Oh, more bad news. This one's a real shock. Um, it's only just been conversing with John, Pop Boom channel, about the Saints and Know Your Product. What a great 45 for it was on the Eternally Yours album, but killer 45, and he he played it on his live stream channel, which I was extremely chuffed about. And the funny thing was, I've always had these weird, I'm a weird person, but I've always had this sort of weird instinct about things, and then, of course, 1 week later, well, before we get into that, and then after all that, I was sitting out the back the other day, and the neighbour over the back was playing some, either a best of or um, I don't know, some oldie station or something. I was playing old Australian songs from the 70s and 80s. Uh, it all sounded pretty, it was very low quality sort of transistor radio type sound. And then it was just sort of thin. And at first I thought they were poor cover versions of the originals. And then suddenly, da 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 da, bang, in comes Know Your Product. And you could hear the bass. It's weird as weird shit. I swear, I was listening to this music for an hour and he could not hear any bass. And the minute, and I'm talking way over in the next street, so it was a long way away, but I could hear it. And this one, you could actually hear the bass. That's how powerful a song Know Your Product is. Oh man, by the Saints. Anyway, just turn this on. This is my morning. It is morning here, but it's also MOURNING now, because just first thing as I turn it on, Chris Bailey dead. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to go digging out singles. Too depressing. But I found the 3 albums I have on vinyl. I have some of his other solo stuff on CD, but these are my. Now this is in tribute to Chris Bailey, who, along with Ed Cooper, founded the Saints and basically invented punk rock in the 70s, even before the Ramones. So God bless Chris Bailey, a hard living guy, always been a hard living, hard drinking man. Of course, he's of Irish extraction, Bailey. Well, there's Bailey's Irish cream, for instance. Born in Rhodesia, or what used to be called Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. Came to Australia probably in the 50s at some stage. He's roughly my age or a little bit younger. I'm 71. I think Chris Bailey and Ed Cooper are probably somewhere between 2 to 3 years younger than me. So he wouldn't have, he probably would have been in his mid 60s to late 60s. I'm not sure. I haven't looked. Yeah, came out to Brisbane in Queensland, which was a real backwater. And it's only just sort of become a proper city in the last 20 or 30 years. But it's one of those places I've been to a couple of times in my life, back in the 60s and 70s. And God, it's just, I just wish to just drive straight through. There was nothing but nothing there, which is, hey, we're in Brisbane. Okay, keep going. Anyway, yeah, so that was one of the main reasons why the Saints were such a powerful band. They came from, it was run by a person called Joe Bjelke-Petersen, a bloody New Zealander, fascist bastard, peanut farmer, just like Jimmy Carter, except instead of being a nice guy like Jimmy Carter, Joe Bjelke-Petersen was a complete fascist. It was a very heavy place. I lived in North Queensland twice, and and just the bad vibes. And I mean, I was just reading the AC/DC book I bought out at the garbage tip, and one of the stories is that the Easy Beats toured up in Cairns, where I lived twice, and they're way up in the far, far north, Queensland. And it was so nasty up there in the mid 60s, even the late 60s, that when they appeared up there, one guy tried to cut uh, one of the members of the band's throat just because he had long hair. But George Young, the tiny little Scots fella of Vander and Young fame, he headbutted the bastard, and then Harry Vander, the tall Dutch guy, smashed his head in. But the Easy Beats could fight. They looked like a bunch of harmless little, but they had to know how to fight in those days. All bands in Australia, even in the 70s for the Saints, they had to be able to fight. And some of their roadies were the best fighters in the country. It was a dangerous place. There was no peace and love in Australia in the 60s. It's all bullshit. It was the opposite here. Anyway, off track. This is my favourite Chris Bailey post Saints the band. He continued on with the name, whereas Ed Cooper went on and formed the Laughing Clowns, and the Yard goes on forever. All Ed Cooper's solo stuff is brilliant too. He put out a shit. He was like Neil Young in that he put out lots of product. And like Neil Young, Ed Cooper's a fantastic guitarist, mate. Not a soloist, but like Neil Young in that sort of chunky rhythm, heavy riffing sort of style. But two great heroes of mine. And Ed Cooper, of course, was an immigrant, came to Australia too from Germany. So he's our favourite German import. Anyway, they had 3 albums, patchy albums, great singles, but patchy albums. And when I worked in North Sydney back in the early 70s, well, I worked there for all through the 70s actually, but I used to walk past their rehearsal space in North Sydney. It was like an old warehouse type building, big old sandstone sort of place. And they used to rehearse on Tuesdays for some reason. And whenever it was Tuesday, I'd go down to the pub to have lunch, and I'd walk past and I could actually hear the Saints practicing, or, yeah. And it was like a rumble coming out of the place. You couldn't quite hear what they were singing or even the tunes, but there was just this rumble coming out. I was going, yeah, it's the Saints. They're working on some stuff. Anyway, R.I.P. Mr. Chris Bailey. I've had this since it came out. This is my original copy on New Rose Records. New one. Simple Love, man. It's a killer classic track. Don't Send Me Roses, killer. Miss Wonderful, killer. Side 2, On the Waterfront, Call It Mine. Bit more subdued. New Rose Records, 7 Rue Pierre Sarrazin, 75006. Paris. Printed in Francais. Yeah, Paralytic tonight. Dublin tomorrow. That's the first thing he did after splitting up with the Saints. And then this probably came out, this came out almost exactly at the same time. Great album by Chris Bailey, going under the name of the Saints, of course, as usual. I thought this was Love, but this ain't just a blunder. Great album. Follow the Leader, Rescue, Senile Dementia, Casablanca, Curtain, Side 2, Come On, not the Chuck Berry song, A Thousand Faces, Animal, Out in the Jungle, Beginning of the Tomato Party's a jam session, but a good one. Out of Sight. The Saints, Chris Bailey, guitar vocals, Janine Hall bass, she's a great bass player. Ian Shedden, drums. Lots of guest artists on here. Steve Sidwell, Roger Corkwell, Paul Nyman, Hugh McDowell, Jess Sutcliffe, Yeah. Here we go. Look, John Morgan Design, North Sydney. See, and front cover photograph, Bled and Butcher, London, 82. This was 1982. I think this was about 81. It could have been. I think it beat Casablanca to the. These are my two favourite Chris Bailey. Not necessarily for the songwriting. He matured and became a very, very good ballad writer. But this is more still along the line of the Saints, without the too much of the punk overdrive, overkill sort of thing. A bit more, a bit like with Ed Cooper with Know Your Product and him. They both got into horns big time, and which really was wonderful. Chris, this is a Chris Bailey album from 1991 on Mushroom Records. Damn. Demons. Media DJ copy on loan for promotion only, not for sale. Yeah, on Mushroom. I've got probably half a dozen of his singles here. The ones I highly, highly recommend, especially a Temple of the Lord, and look up Temple of the Lord video on YouTube. It's great, great song and a great video. Ghost Ships, I believe, is on this one, which was another beautiful, beautiful. Demons, Marquis of Queensbury, Return to Zero, Bridges, Edgar Allan Poe, Running Away from Home, Fade Away, Marie Antoinette, Rusting in the Moonlight. That's the way it goes. So that means I must have that track I just mentioned on a 45 because it's not on this album. Anyway, time's getting away from me. I am a bit. I just woke up, just had a nap. I'm still trying to wake up, and it's just. That's another one. I wasn't expecting bloody. His name, how the Screaming Trees. He's gone. There's only 50 of them. Anyway, yeah, another one gone. R.I.P. Chris Bailey.